I'm Rainey Mullen, and this is Pen and Poet. Intimate conversations and performances with poets, both page and stage, established and up and coming. A safe space where you can meet new artists, maybe gain an appreciation for the spoken and written word. This is poetry for the rest of us, the reachable, understandable, digestible poetry.
That night, Zapata washed my feet. Handlebar whiskers scratched the itch between my legs like myth.
On the days of our births, we breathe the dust of these memories, and it scours our flesh, smooths our skins, fills our lungs.
All the dead desire most is to live in our memory. All they desire most is to laugh and to dance.
Here with my guest, Paulie Lipman. Paulie is a performer, writer, and poet who's been on National Poetry Slam Finals stages, has been on the slam scene for a decade or so, and recently published a chapbook with Swimming with Elephants publications called From Below, Denied the Light. He's been published in journals all over the map and tours pretty regularly, including right now. And Paulie, thank you again for coming on the show.
Oh, not a problem. Only one correction in there.
All right. What you got?
I've been in the National Poetry Slam scene for 16 years. Oh, it's all good, though.
And all right, yeah, so 16 years.
Yeah.
So that ages you. I'm impressed you corrected me, though.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. This is my Douglas Adams year, so I'm particularly proud of it.
Well, you should be.
I'm 42, so.
And I had Damian Flores on, and he did the math, and I think either this year or next year he will have been doing slam for half his life.
Yeah, he was. I met him not long after he started, and he was a puppy.
Yeah.
So he was pretty young. That's the thing in like, especially, well, particularly within the poetry slam world. When I started, I was 25, and like the adult slam and the adult national slam was the thing. Brave New Voices, as big as it is now, did not exist in that way then. And CUPSI, which is the college, I forget the actual definition of the anagram, but it's the college national poetry slam. And they weren't around yet. So now, like some kids start in high school, Brave New Voices, and they go through CUPSI. So by the time they get to the adult scene, they're 8 years a veteran of getting on, writing poems, getting on stage and performing. They've got 8 years under their belt. I came into this with not really great writing. I got by on performance. I had fronted bands. I'd done, a little bit of theater. I knew how to, work it in front of a crowd. So that got me over for longer than it should have. And then writing. Some people who cared about me really weighed in on my writing. They're like, you need to step it up. And
That's
being
cool.
around certain writers made me step it up as well. I was fortunate enough to be on a few slam teams with Andrea Gibson.
Oh, man.
And so just being around them, like, I need to up my game.
No
but
shit.
watching them evolve as well and spending that whole summer together, building the team and the poems and traveling with, they are an amazing individual. But other people along the way, my best friend Ian Doherty, who was one of the co-founders of the Denver Mercury Poetry Slam, he's my best friend. We worked at each other. It's like, you step your game up, you do this here. And just a lot of people I've had the chance to encounter, especially going to the National Poetry Slam, getting outside the bubble I was in and be like, oh, wow, you can do that? I never would have thought of that. Oh, God, I do that, don't I? Am I as annoying when I do that? I probably am. So a lot of that is, shaped me. Just being around other performers, seeing what possibilities there are, knowing kind of where the boundaries are, not to stop at them, but to know where I can press and bend and occasionally kick the boundaries.
That's awesome, because I actually really came into this scene rather late. Only a couple of years ago. So I also had none of that high school training like a lot of the folks, at least here in Albuquerque, have. And just going to the slams here, there are some of those cities like Denver, Albuquerque, I think Boston have amazing folks that are still active. So you either sink or swim right out the gate. So it wasn't so much we got training, but it was one of those, okay, I either have to step it up now or I can just go home and forget the whole damn thing.
Yeah, when you step into a scene that's, like well established or been around, I mean, especially the Boston Poetry Slam from the Cantab Lounge, they've been going since ~95.
Yeah.
And they've seen all sorts of different waves of slam and whatnot, but the writers they produce are always top notch. I mean, Patricia Smith was on the Cantab team at one point. Jack McCarthy, if you want to go back to like the mid '90s, but like even up till now, people like Zeke Russell, Adam Stone, Simone Beaubien. Oh my God, such a great writer. But yeah, and it's weird because I remember I started in the Denver Mercury Slam about a year after they'd been around, so it kind of built up as it went. Like a lot of people were like, I think it's always been, where it's like, no, man, we used to have to beg people to come. Pre-social media, the reason I learned Photoshop is to make flyers for the slam and go around and hit cars with them and, posters and whatnot. It took a while. We were begging people to judge, begging people to slam. We at one point we would have 3 judges instead of 5. And features who came through were like, y'all are cutthroat. And I was like, no, that's just usually we can't get 5 judges. But it's built up. We started going, started getting further and further at the National Poetry Slam. The year we made our first semis, it seemed a lot of more people remembered our names. And then '04 we made finals for the first time. That upped it a lot. But yeah, and now the Denver Mercury Cafe is a destination for a lot of touring poets, and that like warms my heart to no end.
No shit.
And that's having the nationals this past year in Denver. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I got to perform at the Mercury Cafe," and I'm like, "So weird." That's home. That's home for me. But it's great, and it's seeing all the pictures. Like they made sure our team did not compete in that venue because that's. But to see all the other people like excited about it, the pictures from it, I love this. Or just seeing random posts. Oh, I love this room. I love the vibe in here. It's like, yes, thank you. There are a lot of like we mentioned the Cantab. That's a destination for me. Mm-hmm. I want to feature there. I have featured at the Green Mill. Like all these like destinations I had heard. The New Rican Poets Cafe I've featured there a few times. The old Bowery Poetry Club. I want to feature at the new Bowery Poetry Club. Haven't been able to do that yet, but yeah, someone is like sending me like mad messages or something. Mention Facebook, blah, whatever. I can deal with that later.
I'm gonna shun you as the first person to check your phone while here.
Well, no, it like vibrated like 5 times in like a minute, and that was more like
somebody's dead.
Yeah, that's
what that is.
Yeah, that's like, oh God, and then it's just like someone mentioned you in a comment, someone replied to the comment you were mentioning, but like when it goes that much, I'm like, someone is trying to reach me. It's the old instinct before social media was on the phone. It's like someone's really trying to get a hold of me.
You know your grandma's in need when it's the 5th phone call in 7 minutes. You're like, oh, yep, somebody's dying, and you answer, when's your birthday again? No. Anyway, no.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I appreciate the slams, my local slam scene and the national slam scene. We also have another great slam in Denver, Slam Nuba. We cut heads. That's their callback. They formed in '07, made finals their first year at nationals, and like the two scenes have their own unique things about them, but they're both in the same city, so it's all love. But being in the local community and the national community, I've gotten a lot of things from slam, but I called my shot this year. I'm like, I love this team I'm on. Nationals is in Denver. This will be my last year competing on a team. I'm just fried on the process.
I think everybody ends up getting pretty fried pretty easy.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've been to 15. I've competed at 11. But in 2016, due to this system they use, we did not get to compete at nationals. But our slam master's like, well, we promised you a trip, so you're still going.
Nice.
So we all went and volunteered, and I bout managed bouts and hosted bouts, and that was great. And I got the sacrificial poem in a few bouts, and I realized I was like, I've done more individual poems sacking at this nationals than I've competed with at any nationals. But I don't know. Slam taught me a lot of things. Slam taught me how to edit. That was key. And I've learned a lot of things, but now, having been in it so long, I'm looking to things outside of it as well. Like the stuff I was writing 6-7 years ago, I would have never been able to do Chatter ABQ. Like my stuff would have not gone over. And I've been focusing on shorter work. iWhips helped that. The individual World Poetry Slam. I was the Merck's representative for 3 years in a row. And big thing there is, there are rounds where you have to compete with a 1 minute time limit. Yeah, and that's where I've been thriving. Nice. And realizing I don't have to write. I don't have to make it a certain length, and I'm more comfortable. And it's just like in the past, I would have been like, okay, I need to expand more. And it's like, no, that's the ending, man. That's it. You got it. Leave this one alone. Micro poems, there's a few micro poems. I put out a poem or chapbook of micro poems a while back called Wreak Love. Wreak as in wreak havoc, but not havoc. And it was just like, it was a challenge. And, I was like, I'll try that. Poems that can fit on Twitter. I'm not adverse to new things. Something I think a lot of people, like older people in the slam community, tend to dismiss what's new and what's young. They inspire me just as much. It's like, oh, wow. They come from a completely different focus and headspace. Someone just pointed out, it's like the 1990 happened 30 years ago. It's like, fuck. But you always be open to what's around you and something, always be open to the new, be critical, but, and be like, well, just because it's new doesn't mean, make it good. But sometimes it's like, that's something really interesting, and just trying to keep yourself open. Because you never, the minute you think you have reached the pinnacle point, and think you are one of the best at what you do, someone is going to come along, usually younger, and prove you wrong unless you stay sharp. And this now, I'm not just referring to slam, I'm referring to just writing in general, books in general. I thought, something I said for a while, it's like, well, I'm not getting these big money gigs, this and that. I'll be the Fugazi of this thing. I'll do it DIY style. I'll put out my own books. I'll put out my own CDs. Yada, yada, yada. Publishing was the furthest thing from my mind. And now you were like, it's great. You got the book published. It's like, it only took 16 years. I'm very, very, very proud of it. I like the fact that you can get, I have this special problem now of, I run out of books on tour. I have to think ahead and order and do things other than just go to Kinko's and crank out, more copies. But yeah, and touring the country, you meet other people, you hear different, not so much a style, but you notice there's, like, in each region, there's a
voice almost.
There's a voice to it, yeah. And not everyone does it the same, but it's like a lot of the Northeast or Northbeast, as they call it, there's a lot more storytelling in it. And something I've always noticed, there's more storytelling to the poems. Not really my thing, but I love watching it happen. And it's like, oh, that's amazing. And then, you hit different regions, and like there's different elements that wouldn't go into your work because you're not from there. There's the whole, not that there's a style to the, that whole region, but, if you're going to hear different kinds of poems in Portland, Oregon, or Spokane, Washington, than you do in what they call the Southern Fried region, the Georgia and the Carolinas and Louisiana, you're going to hear different types of work. You're going to hear different work addressing different topics. And that's another great thing about traveling is you get all that input. Yeah. And it's not like to steal of it, but, it'll, like, you'll hear a poem, a particular region about a particular thing, and it'll hit you in a certain way. And you're not trying to copy it, but it makes you, it affects your mental process. Like, it's new information in there, and it has literally rewired your brain.
Yeah.
That's how you change someone's mind, quote fingers. Because you introduce a new idea to somebody, you have literally changed the electrical path in their brain. I think it's an amazing concept. I have no grasp of, like, neurological studies or whatever, but I read this thing and I was like, when you introduce a new idea, it, like, makes the brain work differently.
Pathways,
I was like, that's how you change a mind. You're literally changing a mind. Yeah. And I think poetry should do that. I think all good art should do that. Even if you don't, like, it doesn't change your perspective. I always break it down like this. Like, say you take the same route to work every day. And then when someone hears that, they're like, oh, why don't you take this? It's a shortcut. Next time you're driving that route, you may not take that shortcut, but you're going to think about it. And that person has now just changed your thought process. So yeah, I mean, always be open to input. You know, be critical. You know, be like, does this actually work? Is that a thing? Maybe not. But always be open. Is I get asked like, what advice would you give, you know, a writer? And I was like, always be open. Because if you close yourself off, you're gonna keep writing this. You're gonna keep speaking from writing the same stuff, speaking from the same experience. So yeah, and you know, and it makes you look inside too. And it's like, what am I not talking about that is me? And there's some stuff with this chapbook. Well, my previous chapbook, Jew Shit, a menorah of Mazel Tov cocktails. And, you know, a lot of it dealing with, you know, being an inobservant Jew, as I call it. But being culturally Jewish, you know, what does that mean, especially now in Trump's America?
Yeah.
And I have to address that. But I also, like, between that chapbook and From Below Denied the Light, there's a shift. Because everything in Jew Shit comes from a personal place. But it's the hands and fingers are pointing out and addressing things from outside that affect me. And this one, it wasn't a conscious thing. I just shifted into more internal. And personal, strictly personal stuff. And I rode with it. I didn't try to fight it. I didn't say, "Oh, this isn't gonna bang," you know, at a performance. But it's just where I'm naturally at.
Yeah.
And to deny that would be stupid. And it was a good idea because it got me a book.
Yeah. and with that perfect segue, usually get to your first poem way before now, but I am super excited either way. So let us all hear one of your poems so that we can kind of get to know the poet side of you.
This is called Not Today. Today. Some days you live. Others you survive, and some you just exist. While you are doing any of these, the other two will try to convince you that you ain't shit. I do not own the perfect font or stock photo to properly express my current overload. I have no two-sentence meme to sum up the fact that my brain chemistry will not allow me to fully human today. Today I am not mystical, in awe of the universe's majesty, or made of stardust. I am simply a water meat vehicle with an aspirated computer engine sputtering the same command line. Continue, continue, continue. Today, I shared 3 minutes of silence and tail wag with a dog. And in that, no judgment, no complex sentences, no inspirational quotes, just mutual understanding and as much smile as a dog I could muster. Some would call this simplicity. Some might label it Zen. I am not a Buddhist, but have studied the meaning of both those words and the balance between being nothingness to know that to name that moment would be completely missing the point. Today I was told, don't be a wallflower to life's astonishing dance. But today the lights are too bright, the music so loud, steps too brash, the strobe shadow plays every trauma that's tried to murder me, flicker kicks my fist, whirlwinds my boots to anger, dervish spin kick, the sincerest of waltzes whipped into a mosh pit where the only beauty found will be the blood. Not today. Today I am one step removed and mute. Today I will observe and exist and survive. Tomorrow we'll see about living.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Now, I'm actually kind of glad you started with that one, partially because that was one of the ones I was going to ask about first. And I'm sure you went with it because of all my underlines in the copy that you're hanging on to. I actually read that about 20 minutes before you performed. So it was kind of cool to hear it or read it and then hear it. But while I was listening this time, that dog bit with the mutual understanding kind of hit me because anybody who knows me knows I'm a big mental health advocate and have my own struggles. It's that weird. It kind of feels like that weird thing that a lot of folks with mental health struggles, usually depression, have, where you have this moment where it doesn't mean anything at all, like just chilling with a dog.
Yeah.
And suddenly you have an epiphany that if you try to explain it won't mean a fucking thing to anybody.
But it meant something to you.
Yeah, and you have that moment where you're like, oh yeah, things are okay.
Yeah.
And
Chilling here with this dog, and we can both smile.
exactly. But the part that I had meant to bring up originally was about the, let's see. Yeah, you have the underlines.
Yeah, it's all good. I should have brought my own copy.
Nah, you have to sell those.
Well, that's true.
But there's a suggestion towards, well, at the very end. So I see it as a rather dark poem, and that's probably why I gravitated toward it. But a lot of it feels bleak, and I feel like the end could kind of be read both ways. So I was hoping, now that we've actually heard it,
to get some insight on that.
yeah.
It can mean both. It can mean in a very, not languid, that's not the word I'm looking for, but a very mellow way of like, today I'm just gonna be here and I'm just gonna do my thing, and that's a very positive thing. And in some days it's, I need to step back or I'm gonna fucking lose it. Didn't think about that as I was writing it, but after it came out and after performing it a few times, these things, yeah, this is usually the way it happens too, to make itself apparent to me. Because a lot of times, writers will talk about like using techniques and this and that and what they meant here. And I don't know about them, but for me, if I'm trying to like use a poem of mine as an example for, say, a workshop, I've reversed engineered things out of it instead of like, I didn't go into this poem thinking I'm going to address this, and this. I just started writing it, and afterwards, the meaning became more apparent to me, and multiple meanings became more apparent to me as I was editing it and performing it, hearing different reactions to it, and talking to people, and they're like, oh, I got this out of this. And yeah, so sometimes when I see people saying, well, you use this technique, like in my poem, this, and this, and by this I was, exemplifying this, and I'm like, in my head, like a quarter of the time, I'm like, did you really do it that way, or are you full of shit and did you reverse engineer it the way I do? And I can't assume either, right. But there's that little bit, because that's the way I do it. I can't assume everyone does it that way, but sometimes it's like, did not realize that one line or one stanza could have multiple meanings until I experienced it more. But yeah, it can mean both. It can mean like, I'm mellow, I'm taking a self-care day because everything's too nuts and everything will be fine. And then sometimes it's like, I have to step back or I'm going to lose it.
Yeah. And then just existing is a total win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like I woke up and found out this unfortunate news. On the other hand, I woke up.
I'm not dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people don't usually hear that as being a positive, but I actually kind of do.
Yeah.
So I think the recording was already happening when we mentioned Sunday Chatter, and I wanted to bring that up as well, because like you mentioned when we met that day, this is one of the fastest interviews that's ever happened. Usually it's this long period of ask you, read all your shit, hunt you down, know everything about you, bring you on. This happened, I met you Sunday. And theoretically we were supposed to do yesterday, so it's Tuesday, so 2 days later, and boom. But that aside, so I met you Sunday, and I've only been to Sunday Chatter a couple of times, but one, you even recognize that that's not the sort of...
Not my normal crowd, no.
Exactly. But you still manage to keep folks enthralled and still manage to get them to engage you in several moments, which I thought was super awesome, and I was hoping you could chat a bit about that.
Yeah, just going around, traveling around, performing in all the different, and I've performed in all different types of venues, into all different types of crowds. It's a lot of it is just in the performance of it. It is also in the poem selection. These poems in this book tend to lean towards it. Like, this is a very quiet crowd that might laugh here and there, but they're not gonna. It's not gonna be the boisterous reaction I get like sometimes at a slam. Like I tell people, I've performed in very quiet bookstores. I performed in very loud bars where I had to overtake or overpower something that was going on in the other half of the building. I've performed in between industrial noise bands at an underground warehouse party in Denver. I've experienced all different types of venues. A lot of newer poets, when they're going to go start touring from the Merc, and I'm like, I tell them, it's like, you're spoiled here. And I am too. I was too. It's like, you're spoiled here. Not every show you're going to do is they're going to be raptly listening to what you're saying. But it's a performance technique. Just like when I was performing the poem before, I read the quieter parts closer to the microphone. And I knew as I was going to get louder, I backed off the mic so it would rise to the level but still come across the same way. And I saw this very quiet crowd and a lot of white hair. And the music, it being not traditional classical music, being more somewhat contemporary, that helped a little bit too. It got me kind of in the right mindset. But I've done some voiceover work, so that helps too. There was a documentary mailed about Neil Cassidy and his time in Denver, because he was born and raised there, called Neil Cassidy, The Denver Years. We had traditional voiceover narration, but I read from Neil's book, the first third. So I was the voice of Neil Cassidy. And you learn different things like doing, mic control techniques, but you learn different things in live crowds. You learn to read your room. I always have my set list worked out ahead of time. I'm not really good at like that kind of reading the room. Like, oh, there's this and this and I can do this. I'm just more comfortable if I have it like in front of me. I have it, I'll write it out really big with a Sharpie and paper. And I'll have it on the stand if I have one, or on the floor, like when I used to play in bands. There's my set list. I even have to write like after, I was like, after 2 poems, like plug merch. I need that. Otherwise I ramble and, there's 3 poems in a 20-minute set and I just babbled for the rest of it.
I have to say, I'm going to interrupt you there.
Sure.
Because we sat next to each other at the Sunday Chatter, that when you were looking at your set list, I actually thought I was looking at, like, because I used to follow the Denver music scene, like an actual freaking set list so it makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's where I got it from. That's, I write it out big enough so if I have to have it at my feet or taped to a monitor, I can read it. I have glasses now for distance reading, which is good. That helps. But yeah, I need it worked out. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, maybe I'll have a couple of what I call trapdoors. Like, I think the crowd would feel this a little bit more now. I'll swap that poem in for a different one. Since I knew wasn't really the right crowd for the stuff in Jew shit, I was going to I knew I was going to be reading all from Below Denied the Light, so I was like, I picked that out. I was told 10 minutes, so I worked it out. I wrote, because these few free gigs with this book, I've realized I fumble around a lot looking for where the poem is, even though there's a table of contents, because I'm a genius. So I wrote the page numbers down on the set list next to the poem. So I'm like, as I'm babbling, I like know the number, and I can, boom. And that's how I was able to go as quickly as I did. The only part that felt rushed to me was I was told 10 minutes. I'm doing the last poem. I apparently did a little more chatter than I thought I was going to. So it's like 9:40 and I still have a third of the poem to finish. So I'm like barreled through it. I got done at 10 minutes, 19 seconds. I timed it I tend to do that too, wherever I'm featuring, because I am a part of their show. I am a featured part of their show, but I'm not the whole show. So I don't want to disrespect the show by going over my time. So I always tend to stopwatch myself. And, sometimes on the fly, it's like, I got that much time left. I have 3 poems written down. I can't do that. So I'll cut like 1 or 2 of them just to keep the show rolling. As having been a host, that's the mission to me, is always keep the show going, keep the show going. Don't make the show about yourself. But being a feature is a little different because it's partly about you. Mm-hmm. But you're also part of a show. This is you're part of a show that goes on every week or every month, depending. And they need to do those things. They need to keep it moving. So I'm a little highlight. I'm a little sequin. And I sparkle for a little bit, and then I get off the stage. There's nothing worse to me, especially even in an open mic, when you're told you have a certain amount of time, and you're going over, and they just keep going. Confidence, Omanai in Denver, formerly of Oklahoma, amazing poet, but every open mic I used to go to and they would attend, if someone was going long on the open mic portion, she would yell, "No mini features! Someone's here to get paid to do that, that ain't you!" And I'm like, yes, I agree. Do not get up there and read your reinterpretation of Odysseus. No, because to me that's disrespecting the show and disrespecting the audience, and I always want to respect both.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I need my set list. It's my whoopee. It's my Linus blanket.
No, I got really excited when I saw it that way. I was like, oh, it's an actual set list, like straight up shit I used to steal from the stage when they went on their break.
Yep. Yep. There was one show I was at, and a guy kept trying to like grab at the set list like during the show, and like the guitar player like kind of didn't kick him, but he like motioned him away with his foot, like leave that alone. I need that.
I think that's why they now duct tape all four sides, like straight up all around.
Yeah. Or I don't even know if he was trying to grab it. I think he was trying to see what song was next. I was like, let it be a surprise.
No shit.
Because on the internet now, like if a band plays kind of the same set, no matter where they go, and people like research it ahead of. I've gone to shows where people are like calling the next song to me before they do it, and I'm like, would you leave me alone? I don't know. Why? I don't know.
You don't need to know that. That's
I
not
like
part
surprise.
Of the game.
They constructed that set list to land in a certain way.
Right.
I don't need to know 3 seconds ahead of time. I'm cool with finding out when they start playing it.
Although I am one of the guys who will look to see if the song I really, really want to hear is on there.
Right.
But otherwise, yeah, no.
Sometimes it'll fool you. Like years back, I saw the Amnesiac tour for Radiohead at Red Rocks.
Yes, same here.
But they'd only done 2 shows prior to that. And my friend Steven, who I went with, was really disappointed because Fake Plastic Trees was not on either of those sets. We somehow got separated at the show. 3 songs in, they played Fake Plastic Trees. And I was like, I don't know where he is, but Steven is freaking out right now. But I like that. I like the surprise. Yeah. Because like if you've followed anyone long enough, be it a poet or band, you know what they're going to do in the encore.
Yeah.
And they're going to save it to the encore, so don't shout it at any quiet moment. REM on the Green Tour, which I saw at Miami Arena, they had this greeting on the screen. He's like, hello, insert your town name here. Here's a few basic rules to really enjoy the show. And one of them was, do not wait till the quietest moment in the quietest song to shout Radio Free Europe. Michael especially hates this. I wish I could do that before a show. If I ever did a one-man show, I would come up with something like that and try to crossbreed it with some Andy Kaufman introduction. But yeah, just let the person do their thing the way they intended to do it. Mm-hmm. Don't, yeah. If you're going to see Billy Joel, he's going to do Piano Man. So just don't yell it. Yeah. Captain Jack, he's going to play it. Just shush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to instruct you and beg you to read another. Because I like to have at least 3 poems before, so I'm going to hand this back to you.
Okay. We talked about one to end with, so I won't do that one right now. This one always gets some interesting reactions. So.
All right.
Sometimes there are 2 in this book. I tend to jack song titles or a lyric from a song that I think fits. The title of this one, Eastbound Out of Sight, I jacked from a band called Soul Coughing. The line is, turn away and she's eastbound out of sight. And you'll see why here in a second. I've been told I can make an atheist believe in hell. I've been an object lesson. I've been made an object, an afterthought in a hotel gift shop. Been a last gasp, middle finger thrown in parents' faces. Been a project, experiment, perfect for partners who have a thing for Jewish boys. I am a thing. I have been flint to too many, only seeking sparks and denied my own ignition. If you see me burning on the hill, use me for true north, if only to guide yourself away from me. A signpost only appears lonely from constantly pointing away from itself.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank
There's another poem in there called Hell's Around the Corner that I jacked from Tricky.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes it'll just pop into my head oh, that would get, that lyric. It's my version of sampling. Sometimes people catch it, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, I didn't catch it, and I like Soul Coughing. I should have caught that.
Yeah. And so it just kind of popped. I mean, in the case of, the things I address in that poem, they have been she's, they have been he's, they have been neither of those. Z's, zers, just, they're, as bad as I've been in relationships, I also wanted to address the other side of it. You know, I've dated several people that like, oh, I like you because of all these artistic and creative things you do, but I'm gonna make it so you don't want to do those things. And it's like, you know, I have been a project, and that is the worst feeling anyone, you know, like one of the worst feelings anyone can have. You know, it's like, I'm gonna change you, and it's like, but doesn't that go counter to why you wanted to
Liked
be
me
in the first place? Yeah, and I've been dated to piss parents off.
That must feel kind of not good.
Well, the funny part is a lot of the time I get along, because I get along great with parents most of the time. So it's usually like right before the end because I'm not fulfilling my purpose. And a lot of times I didn't realize that's what was happening, but I like, you know, most parents tend to like me. So,
Well, there's
but
that.
I mean, there are horrible things about me too. And I've made many a mistake in a relationship. But to only address that side of it, you know, I don't know. I'm a Libra, whatever the hell that means. Yeah, I thought that side needed to be addressed too. It's like, wait, I've been fucked with too, so I want to address that.
And you're a poet. You have to talk about being fucked
Yeah,
over.
I never do specific breakup poems. Like there are people who do them and they're really good at them, but it's usually for humorous effect. But I'm not, you know, in this one, I don't feel I'm trying to paint myself, you know, the victim or the hero. It's just like, these are the things I've experienced and they suck. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's the only thing like a few things I can address is this is how this made me feel. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's how any of us can really respond to life at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, changing things up a bit, usually I can fiddle or read through things and figure out where you pulled the title from.
Okay.
Here, not so much. I mean, I
Oh,
have
you mean the poem titles or the book title?
the book title.
Oh, that's a line from one of the poems. Name of I
Is
can't
it-
remember right now.
I knew it that I read through this too fast.
Well, when I knew I got the Swimming with Elements wanted to publish me, before I had put the book together, I was on tour, but I wanted to start booking a tour to promote the book when it came out. I didn't, but I needed to name it something. So I was just like going through. Is it from? Yeah, it's from Hell's Around the Corner, the poem with the tricky title. The full line is "Foul screams from below, denied the light."
Ah, damn it!
So
knew it.
I did, you know, a band thing, you know, like comb a lyric, and you're like, oh yeah, that works, and it does address a lot of things. The way the cover worked out, the backslash, I use that a lot. Over the last few years, it popped up into my work instead of. I use it for synonyms. You know, I'll put a backslash between two synonyms, and I've learned to read to indicate the backslash. As much smile as a dog eye could muster. The way I drew it, there's the backslash.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have told me that. They're like, you like read the backslash? And I'm like, yeah, that's but it's something I just started doing and I like it a lot. Partly, I guess, maybe subconsciously taken from the novelist Hubert Selby Jr. Wrote Requiem for a Dream, Last
Okay,
Exit to Brooklyn. He would use backslashes instead of apostrophes. I just always liked the way that looked. You know, it was very striking on the page, and I'm like, it only takes you a few lines, you know, or it occurring a few times in one of his novels. It's like, oh, I see what you're doing, but it was weird. It was weird, and I liked it. Because a lot of times I'll see, you know, if someone's trying to, you know, they don't have much room to write something down, so they put backslashes to indicate line breaks.
Yeah.
If they don't have the space for the line breaks, but I didn't like that either. But the backslash is always stuck in my head. Yeah, so it's something I started doing. Didn't plan on it. It just started occurring, and I like it. So when anyone says like, "Well, this is the mindset I had when I came up with this technique I use," it's like it just happened. You know, I'll explain it that way too. I just started doing it. I liked the way the backslash looked. Like I said, it might have been subconsciously a little nod to Hubert Selby Jr., who's an amazing writer. But yeah. I needed a title for the tour and the book
Right.
at the same time. So I'm like,
You mean Cat wasn't going to publish your book if you didn't put a title on it?
well, no, when I started, it was more for the tour booking. But I also wanted to, it also kind of set the mood. I needed the title to kind of set the mood for the book. as well. So I needed to come up with it. But I had that poem at that point. I had most of these poems at that point. Bloodstone was the one I really worked on during that tour to go in there. But I needed the shape of it. And I just combed the, there are people who are great at titling things. I am not one of them. A poet I really, really admire. Their book will be coming out soon. They're actually at AWP right now in Tampa. Jamie Mortara, currently out of Portland, Oregon. I'm going to look at it because I don't want to paraphrase the title. But I believe the title is "Hello America, I Am Hungry and on Fire."
That is awesome.
That is an amazing title, and they have an amazing collage. They had got a collage artist to do it, and it looks fantastic. And I look at my book. I like my book design a lot. It's very, I'm all about clean lines.
Yeah.
I like function over form. I think it comes across very well and does dictate what you think what's gonna transpire out of it. Yeah, but so the collage thing wouldn't have worked for me. Also, partly to tip my hat to another Bassam, another writer who's going to be coming out on Swimming with Elephants. Their upcoming book, they had a backslash in the title too. It's like, oh, our titles are kind of similar. And I'd had this idea to have like a mostly black cover, but a friend of mine, Dan Chick, in Denver, does light photography. So I had the idea of like from below the night, an arm, like coming in, but like a light photography outline arm. And then Bassam sent me the picture of their cover, and it's a collage cover, and there's an arm coming out of the ocean. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Correct the title for Jamie Mortard is "Good Morning America, I Am Hungry and on Fire."
That is so awesome.
Jamie is an amazing, amazing poet. You can find him on YouTube. There's one from, I can't remember what year at AWP. It was at AWP in a reading. Things to Know Before Dating Me. When someone first linked me to it, I'm like, oh God, a list poem. But it's well put together. Some of it's funny, some of it's offhand, and some of it just. Sometimes I let my phone die, and I envy it. That always hits me. I've heard people laugh. It's weird to me. Like I'll hear a poem, and it's so like certain things are so serious to me in that poem, and then I'll see a recording of another performance of it, and people will like laugh in places that gutted me, and I'm like, how can you laugh at that? That's not funny.
No, I've come across that, and you had it over
this
weekend.
I had it at Chatter. I was like, I don't normally get a laugh there. I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah, I almost wonder because a lot of times,
sometimes it's I think it's nervous laughter. Like I don't know how to handle that line.
And I think part of it is that they don't understand the gravity because they haven't been in that situation. True. Of which point, I'm like, oh. I am so fucking glad for you right now because
you haven't. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a difference in perspective. I have a poem. I'm not going to do it here, but it's in the book. If you want to order it, you can order it through Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com.
And I will have links all over the place.
And you can hit me, or you can buy it from me directly through GoFundMe I have going, or through Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. I can do all those things.
Nice.
I went into my salesman voice.
I appreciate it. You're the first person that just stopped and been like, I am just here. It is
2.9 APR financing. I would love to get into voiceover work, especially for animation, but you have to pretty much live in LA to do it, and I don't want to live there.
Nobody does.
No, people have to live there, but people don't want to live there. But yeah, there's a line in it. The line prior to it is funny. I wrote the next line to be not so much not is kind of what we call in Denver the handbrake. Like oh God. I'm gonna tease it a little. I'm just gonna give the two lines. I'm just gonna give the two lines.
Nice.
Just to give the listeners an idea. And here we go. Jewish boys have their own holy trinity: God, mother, therapist. There's the laugh. I have only shared the details of my 2 sexual assaults with God and several hundred of people like yourselves. When I get laughs on that line, it does mess with me, and it's something I was trained to deal with because we were going to do it in competition at the National Poetry Slam, and I had to like gird myself for that because I don't have a very good poker face for certain things, and they were like, we can see you reacting badly, we can see your rock back a little bit, we need to like train, you just need to be able to barrel through it, because that line to me is not funny, and several hundred people like yourselves is more, in my mind, and the way I felt it was desperation. Like, I can't afford a therapist, I can't talk to one, I can rip my guts out in front of a crowd full of people that I don't know. I mean, that's the thing for a lot of people get into performance arts. It's much easier to do it that way because sometimes you can just see the audience as a blob, Yeah. Especially if I take my glasses off, they're a blob. And my eyes, I'm doing the theater trick. I'm aiming for the back wall. And I tend to, especially stuff like that, I tend to resort to that. I aim for the back wall and whatever reaction comes, but I just barrel through it. But yeah, it could be that person's experience, they haven't experienced anything like that, or they could be like, I don't know. They're expecting a funny line, so they start to laugh, and then they're like, that's not funny. Or maybe they think it's funny. I don't know. You can never quiz an entire audience after you're done. I don't want to focus group my audience and be like, well, what about that? Really, the whole concept of market research and focus groups kind of makes me ill. It harkens back to the Bill Hicks line. If anyone here tonight is in advertising or marketing, kill yourself. No, there's no joke here. Just do it.
So how do you get through that then?
I did the poem enough. I still need to reference it now, but like when we were rehearsing all summer, I like had it down, memorized. And like I said, at those moments, I just learned to look to the back of the, it still looks like I'm looking at the crowd, but I'm looking at the back wall, and I just deal with the back wall, and it's almost like an echo. I let the laugh hit me back, and then go. It sucks sometimes, especially in that type of environment, and especially if you're part of a team and you're working toward a goal. I have to, sometimes you have to like put personal shit down a little bit because you're part of a greater group. Yeah. Yeah, it sucks sometimes, but I can't depend on an audience always knowing exactly what I mean by something. So he told a funny line before. This is a continuation of the joke, which makes sense. I tend to sometimes have these really harsh transitions, and that's just the way I write. So yeah, I can't count on anyone to like always follow through me. Some shows it happens, they're like, ha, and then the next line you just hear like, you hear people sucking wind, and they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, it landed exactly how I wanted it to. But like any art, it's never going to land always exactly how you want it to.
Yeah.
And you just have to deal with that. I can't get huffy about it. I have better things to waste my energies on, or,
right.
Give my energies to. But it's just a thing that happens.
So I'm going to change things up again because we're kind of nearing the end, and we've kind of gotten through my questions inadvertently.
Okay, cool.
But I like to ask folks often who their go-to poets are, and I know you've mentioned several of them, but I will say that as reading it and being relatively new to poetry, I see you as a performance poet primarily. It's even reading both Jew Shit and the formally published bit, it feels like there's a movement, like an attempt to maybe broaden into stuff that's a little less.
Definitely. I didn't dismiss things because like I didn't know how to perform them. A lot of times, like especially with older poems, as I wrote them, I knew how I would perform them. And then I would do them a few times and make some modifications here and there, but I had an idea. These, a lot of them for this tour were the first time they were ever uttered out loud, so I'm still learning how to perform them. Even if I just tend to, just do more books, every time I want to, if I'm asked to read or present my work, I want it to have, it has to hit them live. Yeah. I've met some great poets on page. They're amazing. Like, I read it, and I'm like, oh, my God. And then I see them, like, perform or recite their own work, and I'm like, oh, God. Why? No, this is amazing. Why are you... Your voice is so... shit. There was a recording a while back, like a CD box set of, like, it was called The Century of Poetry. And it starts with a wax cylinder recording of Walt Whitman.
Wow.
And then, like, goes down the line, and I heard, like, in my... in reading certain poets' poems over the years, I had this like voice built up, and I know it's not going to match that, but like when I heard William Carlos Williams read, I'm like, that's not the voice I heard, and I always heard a robust, passionate voice, and it's very like nasal. You know, some people can't help that, but it just, even if you do primarily page poems, I think you should have at least a little experience or work on that aspect as much as performance poets need to work about how things look on the page. Because it used to be I just was like left margin, didn't care how it looked at all. And I'm not one for like doing the like thing, oh, look, the words form a wine glass. You know, that's not my thing. But I am more concerned with how it looks on page. There are 2 poems in this book that use a technique of using a right margin to maybe express an auxiliary voice, an auxiliary voice or a different voice, weighing in on the same thing. And I tend to do those very quickly. That just seems to be my go-to. Like the other voice is always like the manic part of my brain, and this is the more thoughtful. The left margin is the more thoughtful. Maybe I should switch that up at some point. But yeah, I'm still discovering that. You know, I'm discovering a lot of things like writing wise. I'm still learning, and I'm still open to learn things. To get back to that point, go-to poets.
So people you look up to, emulate, or like now you either read or listen to.
I'll say who I'm inspired by. Because a lot of times, you know, people are like, what are your influences? And I say them, like, you don't sound anything like them. I was like,
no.
Well, you didn't ask me who I was trying to rip off.
No. I'm like broad, mostly because this podcast is not only to introduce folks, but to broaden folks' spectrum. So I have performance poets, I have erotic poets, I have page poets. So
I'm gonna jump around a bit. Dinesh Smith, now National Book Award finalist, and again Lambda Literary Fellow. Amazing poet on page and in performance. Go back. I tend not to go farther back. I don't really dig on the classic poets. I'm not. I've never
struggle with that myself.
I've never gotten anything out of them. The farthest back I like to go is E.E. Cummings. But also to jump from there, the Harlem Renaissance writers, Langston Hughes, brilliant, brilliant stuff. Patricia Smith.
Yes.
And
who doesn't like Patricia Smith?
I've met some folks.
No,
I'm not going to call anyone. I'm not going to. No, I'm not going to call anyone out by name. National Poetry Slam. One of the years it was in, not really Boston, Cambridge. Patricia Smith. One of the late night events was Patricia Smith featuring. And there was, they were doing a version of the Encyclopedia show at the same time. So I'm waiting in line to see Patricia Smith because Patricia Smith.
Duh.
I was very honored for the fact Patricia approached me earlier in the day. Like, I can't fill a whole hour. Would you read some things? I'm asking a few other people. And I'm like, well, yeah. So I'm waiting in line. And I'm like, oh, you coming in? They're like, oh, no, we're going to this thing. And I'm like, it's Patricia Smith. They didn't seem to care.
Wow.
So yeah, and the event before wound up going over. So Patricia was very apologetic. Like, I asked all these people to read, and we're like, we'd rather hear you. Just go. Let's see who else. Trying to cover like all aspects. They became more of a novelist later in their life. Maggie Estep. It's one of my early like performance influences. I'm gonna go a little off poet here as well, because
Bring it.
A lot of times when I get asked who are your influences, I like to give non-poets, because especially for performance, but sometimes in thought process and creativity as well. Roddy Piper. Nice. For more of my loud performanceness. I grew up on Roddy Piper. Ugly cried on public transportation the day I found out he died. Bill Hicks. Definitely.
Yes.
In thought process as well, because I think he was a great thinker as well, and like to challenge things. Let's go back to poetry. Let's see. Bell Hooks. Amazing. I never have these like ready in my brain, and I'll think of it like 20 minutes after we stop this. And I'm like, oh, them. Oh, Nikki Giovanni, of course. Let's see. More. Yeah, I have a I tend to, when I do workshops, all the workshops I've developed I bring things from different mediums to apply to poetry. So let's see. I have a whole workshop built around the first line of the novel Neuromancer by William Gibson. I have a section of a workshop which is about editing, which I think does not get nearly covered enough in workshops. I use a technique, or I explain a technique that Robert Rodriguez uses when he's trying to edit one of his films. He'll have like a loose assemblage, like 4 hours, so it's like after the free write, you got all the stuff. And he's like, then I'll concentrate on the first half hour and just edit that down to like perfect, no wasted movement, pauses, breaths, everything. It's just tight and ready to go. And he says that will dictate the rhythm of the editing of the rest of the film. So I have people in the workshop like take the first 2 stanzas of a piece and like get them down to like bare bones, like perfection. And then I tell them to go home and, edit the rest and see how it. A lot of my workshops are I introduce a technique that I've either figured out or come up with, and I don't expect anyone to come out of my workshop with a poem done. I want to introduce a thing to them. Like I said about changing minds earlier, I want to introduce a new technique. They may not use it on the poem they thought they were, but later down the line they'll be like, oh, I could use that thing he did. So yeah, I'm influenced by William Gibson. The first line of his first novel was "The sky above the port was the color of television tuned to a dead channel." It's one of the best opening visual. He had a lot of poetry in his prose, which still does. I'm talking like he's dead. Jesus. I met him for the last novel he published. He did a reading at Tattered Cover in Denver. Yeah, he has the most soothing voice, almost to a detriment. Because I was like, I'm enjoying your storytelling, but I'm also starting to nod off. Not like I'm bored, but your voice is so soothing. Yeah, Robert Rodriguez. I use techniques. He's talked about making films and making independent films and doing your own thing. I've taken things from them as well. Yeah, all over the map. Give some poet people. When I was coming up in Denver, there was a cat named Trinidad Sanchez, originally from Texas. Amazing poet. He's no longer with us. Tony Sabella, who this tattoo here is for. Him, Stuart Z. Perkoff, and I'm forgetting the third. Forgetting the third person. They formed a small press back in the day called Black Ace, which a while back I saw an interview with Thurston Moore, and apparently one of his things when he tours is finding obscure chapbooks, and he rattled off some presses that he always looks for, and one of them was Black Ace.
No kidding.
Yeah, they're all 3 of the people of the founders are in the Outlaw Bible of American Poetry.
Oh, shit.
Tony Sabella. Tony was one of the few old school cats that was really into slam. He was an old Venice Beach beat. He hung out with a lot of those people, hung out with a lot of the famous people. But he loved it. He was just this tiny guy with his leather vest and his leather bass, but his leathery voice, small, and smoking a Capri. But he liked a lot of what we did, so he was a big influence. Like this tattoo I refer to, I got this 3 hours after I found out that they were gone.
Wow.
He was his mid 80s. But yeah, I want to give shout outs to people from the Denver community. Ian Dougherty, like I mentioned earlier, Andrea Gibson, of course. Currently, this poet goes by Tolu. Amazing. They I'm not sure if they still are. They were the first Denver Youth Poet Laureate. They help run Slam Nuba. One of my former teammates, Hakeem Furious. Yeah, I was the team that made finals in 2015 that I was on with Hakeem, their first year. Yeah, great poet, great person. Yeah, I'll stop with that.
All right.
Cool.
Excellent. So we chatted before we hit record that I wanted to kind of get you to read Dirge.
Yeah.
And partially because, it hit personally for me, like a few of yours have, that Today one as well. But this one, there's a line, I think it's at the end.
You have it underlined with damn. You have it underlined with the word damn.
So I will just leave it at that and basically say that I think it's one of those lines that even if you have a pretty solid life,
yeah,
and you're in a good state, that you feel that way at least once, whereas someone such as myself probably feels it several times a day. And I think I'll leave it at that, and we'll kind of end there, and of course do our icebreaker poems.
Okay. I just want a quick shout out to Voicemail Poems, where this poem first appeared. Its first home was there. If you've never checked them out, check them out.
I have actually listened to several episodes.
Yeah,
Not
so-
as many as I should.
Yeah, they're a great magazine. The whole concept is you send them the text, but then you record the poem on their voicemail, and they publish both at the same time online. And it's a really good way to like read the text and hear how the poet performs them. So I just wanted to give them a quick shout out. This is called Dirge. I know the fanciest car at my funeral will be the one I'm in. Coffin, scavenged plank, plywood, bonus for graffiti, just please, no IKEA. My second line, rummaged oil drums, coffee can guitars, solar-powered samplers, the most joyous broken beats, praise shouts, metal, punk, funk, gut bucket blues, goth klezmer, one last glorious dissonance. Stop the procession before me, the hearse go over the cliff. Cadillac pyre, nothing for the carry-ons. You cannot be thrown to the wolves when you've always run with them. No reception. Skip Shiva. Miss the Kaddish. Smash cut gasoline cremation. No headstone. For too long an epitaph. I always wanted to be the credible lie my parents told the world, rather than the reliable disappointment they always came home to.
Damn. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Well, we've talked about your book,
Mhm.
so I did want to let you chat about your tour a bit. I have a
Okay.
feeling that this episode won't show up till towards the end,
Okay.
but it sounds like you do this every year, so by all
Yeah,
means.
I'm the From Below to Nightlight tour. Will have me on the road. I'm hitting Utah in a couple days, and then it's gigs in California, Oregon, Washington. I believe I'm hitting Boise, Idaho on the way home. Yeah, so I won't get home till late-ish April. But I will. You can find all the stuff. I don't currently have a website. Bad poet. You can find me on Facebook. Every other form of social media, you can find me at Paulie Lipman, all one word, lowercase, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, all that. Yeah, and you can get the book from, and there'll be links.
Yes,
So
there
we will leave it to links with the podcast. I'll be touring this. I might do more later in the year. I might not. Depends on how tired I am after this tour. I do. I also have a music project back home with my best friend Ian called Due Diligence.
Nice.
We finally have the setup we want, so need to start working on it more. So yeah, that's the book and the tour.
Excellent. All right. Anything else you wanted to hit on before we hit the icebreakers?
Nah, I think we covered a good amount.
Score.
Let's go with the icebreakers.
All right. And usually I give the guest the chance to decide whether they want to go first or second, but I liked yours way more, so I am going to go first so we can end on an up note.
Okay.
So this time we did what's called a tricube. It's a relatively new form, basically 3 stanzas, so 3 paragraph-ish spots. Each stanza has 3 lines. Each line has 3 syllables, so it's basically 3 cubes, hence tricube. And mine is: lonely nights are baseball cards. As you collect more and more of them, the less the value either of you carry.
Damn.
All right.
All right. Mine is, let's see. Microphones let me loose more than smiles. Therapy. Many forms, not formal. Silence makes me nervous. The unknown.
Awesome. All right, Paulie, thank you. It's been a pleasure to meet you in the very short time that you're here in town.
Well, it's been great to meet you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, not a problem. My pleasure.
I want to thank my guest, Paulie Lipman, again for coming on the show. Paulie is an icon in the slam community, and it was great to meet and talk to someone like that. He's a great person, a solid writer, a brilliant performer. You can find his new book of poetry, From Below, Denied the Light, published by Swimming with Elephants Publications this year at swimmingwithelephants.com or on Amazon. Paulie is also currently touring the US, so I've actually pushed up his interview to release much sooner than usual. So find him on Facebook and book him if you want to see him come to your town. If you want to be a guest on the show, you can reach me at rainy.mullen@gmail.com. That's rene.mullen@gmail.com. Or find me on Facebook or Twitter. The show is actually becoming a bit more popular than I ever thought possible. So thank you to everyone who listens and helps me promote this show. And as always, stay safe.